He developed the area, starting with the corner here at Lake Michigan Drive in Kinney. He owned a grocery store, general store, and home right here at this intersection in 1956, right where we're standing. We caught up with Mr. Stanton's granddaughter. She was in the basement of her grandfather's store just over here when that tornado hit and ripped apart all of their lives.
It sounded like several diesel train engines.
Ever noticed how survivors like Pat Spangenberg never seem to forget the sound?
And remembering hearing the ripping of the nails as the tornado pulled the building above us off.
But from her story, one sound is alarmingly missing.
Do you remember hearing a siren at all that day?
No, I don't remember any siren.
Pat was 7, heard no siren, but a different type of warning that day.
Frank Slaymaker, the weatherman at that time, came on and told us there was a tornado, and my parents looked out the window and saw the funnel cloud coming at us.
With no basement in the house, the family and a few friends seek shelter at the family store.
We just barely got down to the bottom of the basement steps and the tornado hit. And over here is where nothing is left is my grandfather's store that we were in, the basement.
So you were in here?
Yeah.
Pat and 20 others emerged from the rubble, alive and in shock.
Oh my goodness, we just lost our whole life.
Now, there were sirens in Grand Rapids back then, so why weren't they sounded?
This would represent a large majority of the sirens that were put in starting probably in the late 50s through the 70s. This is called a thunderbolt. They used them mostly, I believe, for civil defense at that time. I don't believe anybody was using them for weather.
Soon after the 56 tornado, the warning system in West Michigan expanded to include all types of evil in the atmosphere. And that's where Jeff DePilka and West Shore Services come in. Since 1979, they've installed 650 outdoor warning sirens in the state of Michigan.
So if you're in Standale today, you'd hear something before?
Yes, you would.
Before an F5 rolled through?
You would, yes. If you were in Standale today, there's several sirens that cover that part of their town, of their community.
But that is not the case for every West Michigan community. The working number of sirens in each county varies greatly. Some emergency managers argue that sirens are confusing, limited, and not cost-effective. They say cell phones, pagers, and cable weather calls are the warning of the future.
Well, you'll find that there are a few emergency managers that feel that way. I think that basically, though, most folks wake up later on and go, you know what? People don't always have their warning devices with them. If you're swimming, you don't have your cell phone. If you're doing something that's noisy, you can't hear a phone ring.
Community wiped out.
But for those like Pat Spangenberg, who have lived through a storm like the monster of 56, the value of any warning, any sound other than that of terror, will likely never be taken for granted.
I get pretty nervous when there's weather warnings out. When it goes off, you got to pay attention to it because it's going off for a reason.
For more warning siren information as it pertains to your area, we invite you to go to our website at woodtv.com. There you'll find our homepage. Look for the icon tracking the storm 50 years later. Click on that and then choose warning sirens. You'll find maps and locations for sirens county by county. All of that information provided by many of the emergency managers around the area. Thanks to them. And back to you, Craig.
Well, thank you very much, Ginger. And we want to remind viewers there are other ways to get severe weather warnings. Storm Team 8 offers WeatherWarn, a free service that sends an alert to your home computer, pager, or cell phone. Again, it's on our website at woodtv.com. Look for the WeatherWarn icon.
Well, tracking the storm 50 years later continues as we fly with Chopper 8 and a man who witnessed the destruction from the air. What would happen if the same kind of storm hit West Michigan today?
We've told you about two separate West Michigan tornadoes in 1956, the one in Saugatuck and the other referred to as the Hudsonville Standale tornado.
But did you know there were a total of 4 tornadoes that roared through Michigan on April 3rd, 1956? Early in the day, a tornado was spotted near Manistee. That tornado killed 2 people as it swept past Thompsonville to just south of Traverse City. Then, around 7:30 p.m., an F3 tornado was sighted near Bangor in Van Buren County. It moved northeast through Allegan County into Kent County before lifting near Lowell.
The F5 tornado that struck the district of Standale was still on the move, and if it veered south, it could have hit downtown Grand Rapids. But the tornado turned north, which is where we find Storm Team 8 meteorologist Matt Kirkwood live on Alpine Avenue near 4 Mile. Matt?
50 years ago, Craig, not that far behind me, a family of 6 anxiously watched the sky and listened to the radio to see if the F5 tornado was going to hit their neighborhood next.
At the time of the tornado, this house was about half this wide, and it was L-shaped.
Willie Postma survived the '56 tornado.
We could easily see the thing coming across the river. You could see it, big black funnel cloud.
So too former radio announcer Bruce Grant. 2 survivors they've never met, yet one credits the other with saving her life.
The announcers on radio started saying there's a storm coming tonight, there's a storm coming.
Willie and her husband were worried. If the tornado was headed toward Walker, they needed time to get their 4 sons to safety.
We were listening to Bruce Grant.
By 7 p.m., with the tornado heading towards Grand Rapids, a young Bruce Grant was warning West Michigan not from the safety of the studio, but from the top of the tallest building in Grand Rapids.
And I knew that people were being injured and dying. And I thought, well, what can you do? You try to maintain your calm and tell people what to do, and that's what I did.
And all of a sudden, Bruce Grant said, it's turned, it's heading north. Everybody on the north side of Grand Rapids take immediate cover.
Willie and her family did just that. Minutes after Bruce's warning, huddled in the corner of their basement, the tornado struck.
And it was just a terrible, terrible noise, just a roar. And it hit, and we were in daylight. There was nothing over our heads. We were right outdoors. And if Bruce Grant had left that speaker and hadn't kept announcing, we just wouldn't have taken cover like we did.
I've waited 50 years to meet you.
Well, I'm glad you're still here.
Well, I'm glad you're still here.
50 years later, Storm Team 8 brought the 2 survivors together, one thanking the other for a job well done.
I can't begin to tell you how much this means to me.
Well, I'm glad.
It's been a long time. We've wanted for years to tell you thank you. You saved our lives that day.
And interesting to note, the April 3rd, 1956 tornado was one of 2 F5 tornadoes to ever hit Michigan. The other one was a Flint Beecher tornado, and that was the last one to kill over 100 people. Craig?
Well, thank you, Matt. And when the tornadoes here in West Michigan were all over, 17 people were dead and more than $1 million in damage was caused by West Michigan's only F5 tornado. But what would happen if the same kind of storm followed the same path today?
Homes destroyed and cars and everything laying around and, oh yeah, extensive trees down and, oh, it was a real sharp path. Of course, we didn't have all these homes here then, so.
Now, Bill Chasson worked for the National Weather Service and 50 years ago flew the path of the tornado from Hudsonville to Standale. Storm Team 8 did some digging and came up with some numbers representing populations then and now. In 1956, there were just over 8,000 people living in the Hudsonville and Georgetown areas. No surprise, the number of people living in the same area has grown throughout the years. Estimations today are over 52,000 people. When we return, what every home should have in case of emergency weather or otherwise, as Tracking the Storm 50 years later continues.
Well, what should you have on hand in case of an emergency? For that, we go back to Storm Team 8's Ginger Z.
Well, there are a couple of things you need and things that are intuitive, but people just don't have in their homes. You don't think it'll happen. Well, it could. You want to have food that makes sense, of course. You've got the anything that canned or non-perishable, stuff that would make a meal. I looked around in my house, it's kind of embarrassing. I really wouldn't be nourished by much of this, so have a better meal. Also, know a weather radio, extremely important, a battery-operated radio, along with, of course, extra batteries, because you want it to work throughout the emergency, and of course, plenty of that bottled water. All of those are very important things, along with a plan for you and your family or your place of business, maybe even the random places like the gym. Just know where to go and know what will happen in the time of emergency.
Well, thanks, Ginger.
And the city of Hudsonville and the National Weather Service are working to promote severe weather safety by commemorating the 1956 tornado. On April 3rd, this plaque listing the 17 people who died 50 years ago will be dedicated. The event starts at 5:30 at the Hudsonville High School. All survivors and their immediate family are invited to attend.
Now, for more information on the commemoration, along with more information on the 56 tornado, please visit our website at woodtv.com.
And thank you very much for joining us this evening.